Welcome. This is the Strengthen Local Climate Commitments National Monthly Collaboration Call. Please do put your name, your pronouns, your congregation, your location, and the traditional home of the Indigenous nation on which you are located into the chat so that we all can have a sense of who everyone is, where you're from. I am Doris Marlin. I will be doing the same, and I am with All Souls Church out of Washington, D.C. So welcome to the SLCC, Strengthen Local Climate Commitment Call, a campaign within the Create Climate Justice networking framework of the UU Ministry for Earth. So I have recently had a chance to update this slide, and you may notice that we have gone from 250 individuals to 410 and from 125 congregations to 215. And what that means is an individual has at some level connected with the SLCC campaign, and they are connected to a congregation. So just so you kind of get a sense of what that means, that's 1 in 5, 20% of the UU congregations nationwide. And let me double check that you are seeing the slide. Can I get a yes?
Yes.
Great. Thank you. All right. So what is Strengthen Local Climate Commitments? That is not something we're going to spend a lot of time on tonight because we have so much else to talk about regarding our Goal 6, Be Visible. But essentially, it is a campaign that seeks to enliven, empower, encourage individual UUs to reach out within their own congregations, to other organizations, to roll up their sleeves with their friends who want deeper community partnering and want to achieve measurable results on climate action and equity, and essentially work on your local climate action plan to strengthen it and accelerate it. Don't settle for we'll be at 50% emissions reductions by 2050. No, strengthen and accelerate it. Get that to 50% reduction by 2030. So what are all the goals? Well, primarily, climate justice and equity needs to be written into the plan. Hold the elected representatives accountable. Partner with other organizations and with your local employers, with your elected officials, with everyone in your community to build a strong plan. We are seeing daily the effects of disasters, and without a strong plan, or at least a well-prepared plan that considers equity, there will be more trouble than there needs to be, more devastation. It is to network and movement build, act locally, think globally, because every climate action you take is a co-benefit for numerous other advantages at the global level. Be visible. We will discuss that in much greater detail for the rest of the evening. Advance social justice, and of course, UU the vote for climate candidates. Get yourself a climate mayor, a climate governor, and support those candidates that support climate justice. And you know what, I'm just going to finish running through these, and then we'll have our chalice opening and grounding. Okay, so one way to be visible might look like, well, actually, let's just talk a little bit about what it means to be visible. To build broad awareness about widespread climate action. If someone sees you on the corner holding your sign about climate action, and they know you from, school, the neighborhood, they'll say, hey, Gary's That's Gary. I like Gary. I like what he stands for. I need to give climate a better, a better consideration. Aspire to higher local objectives. Don't settle for wimpy things like, yeah, we'll be at 50% lower emissions by 2050. No, set higher local objectives, press for 2030 or sooner, and inspire others to broadly engage in the climate movement. So what might that look like? Well, like I said, roll up your sleeves, sit down across the table with others, and really work that climate action plan. Figure out who's missing, who's not at the table, and get them at the table. Go to the public meetings and express your interests, express your concerns, express your gratitude when your community is doing a good job. And if they are not doing a good job, and I'm really happy to see our friends with Elders Climate Action here. If they are not doing a good job, if they haven't even started, it might be time to declare a climate emergency. So with that, welcome Allie Tharp, who has moved beyond our UU Ministry for Earth and gone on to an area that you will hear much more about. And I also want to give gratitude that during the initial phases of Strengthen Local Climate Commitments, she was there saying, Doris, try this. I think it might be more interesting if you did, et cetera, et cetera. So Allie nurtured and helped bring Strengthen Local Climate Commitments to fruition. And with that, thank you so much for being here. There's quite a handful of new and old faces, and take it away, Allie.
Thanks, Doris, and hi, everyone. So my current role is as a senior organizer with Green Faith, and I represent people of faith on a coalition called People versus Fossil Fuels, which is focused on pushing Biden to declare a climate emergency, phasing out fossil fuel permitting, fossil fuel extraction from public lands, and moving towards a just transition and a renewable energy economy as fast as possible. So we do that in direct partnership with Indigenous and frontline communities who are at the leadership of that coalition, as well as many groups you're probably familiar with, such as Center for Biological Diversity and Food and Water Watch and Green Faith. So it's a real honor to serve on that coalition, and I'm hopeful that UUs will, actually, I know UUs are a huge part of it. Representing out of the 250 faith groups who have signed on, UUs are a huge percentage of that. So thank you to everyone who helped get your church engaged in People versus Fossil Fuels. So Doris asked me well, we had lunch during a People versus Fossil Fuels action the other month, and that snowballed into coming together tonight. So I'm going to start with introducing a little bit more about what's going on with Green Faith right now and what we're building towards in this context of being visible. And then we'll dive into also a bit about direct action and have a conversation about that. So Green Faith and our international network of partners has launched the third Faiths for Climate Justice mobilization. So this is a time where local faith communities across the whole world will organize events. And this year it's from October 2nd through November 6th, which is the day that the UN COP27 conference begins in Egypt. So the invitation, as I just said, organize where you live, plan a local action, do this with faith partners. It could be a UU specific event or an interfaith event. The main demands that we're uplifting, which you can tailor to your local context, are the immediate end to new fossil fuel projects and deforestation, a rapid transition to 100% renewables, and a fair phase out of fossil fuels, and a commitment to a just transition for impacted workers and climate vulnerable communities. So there are three features of a Green Faith action, which are helpful for any time you're trying to be visible as a person of faith, and also especially if you feel called to respond to this invitation to join the Faiths for Climate Justice, bring your religion, your spirituality, your faith into the streets, into the halls of power. Often UUs will show up all the time, but they'll show up with Sierra Club or they'll show up with Audubon and don't feel as comfortable saying, I'm here as a Unitarian Universalist, and we wear our Yellow Side with Love t-shirts, right? But there may be other ways that creatively we can define what it looks like to show up visibly as a person of faith. Also sharing a moral message and the community's good energy. So how do we show up, again, visibly showing our moral values and making a moral message? So we have a unique role and gift as people of faith showing up in the public sector, in the public sphere, calling for climate action. So using our principles, for example, and the language of our principles and our moral message for why we need to phase out fossil fuels. And then lastly, we are welcoming and we make it easy for people to connect with us. So the feeling of a faith-based public action would be one that's inviting, one that intrigues, and one where people who are walking by would be welcomed in, and it wouldn't be a bunch of people with their backs turned, right? More insular, but something that's visible, that is not so, sometimes the tenor and tone of a public action could be so intense that you want to move away from it. Ideally, a multi-faith action would be one that intrigues and pulls people in. So these are guidelines and features of the kind of action that Green Faith is encouraging our local partners and grassroots leaders to organize. So I'm going to stop the share really quickly and just put a few links in the chat. So here is the main page for this mobilization, which includes the map of where actions will happen. And if you do plan one locally or join one locally, make sure it's on the map. And there's also the ability to download a toolkit, which gives you a lot of resources and recommendations for how to plan an action. And then we are also doing community support calls for people who want to plan an action every Tuesday at 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Central or Pacific, sorry. So 11 Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern every Tuesday. We're skipping the September 27th for Rosh Hashanah, but every other Tuesday between now and November, there will be a community support call to just create a space for leaders across the country to connect and get supported. Okay, so the next kind of, I want to start by saying this can be any type of action. Green Faith is not calling you to do an arrestable, nonviolent direct action necessarily, and there's a lot of skill building and learning, not that you couldn't, but this is something where there's a broad spectrum of how you can engage. And we'll go into that more deeply, but today we wanted to talk about the nonviolent direct action tactic within being visible. And I wanted to start that with a question and just open to the floor. Why is the climate movement resorting to nonviolent direct action? And maybe we also need a definition for direct action. So I could just say this is using your body, using your power and your energy to directly address the problem or build the solution as much as you can. So civil disobedience as a term is breaking an unjust law. Direct action is a bit broader of a definition, but it's also about using your own will, your own energy, your own power, and building power collectively to get us direct to the source of the problem or the solution as possible.
So Ellie, we're 20 people. Do you want people to put their responses in the chat, shout it out?
No, yeah, I just want a few folks, 2 folks who have an opinion about this to share. Why is the climate movement using nonviolent direct action? Why are people blocking roads, gluing themselves to paintings, sitting in at Chuck Schumer's office? Why is this happening? Gary.
Well, because nothing else has been effective. everything else that's come before has been effective. Also, there was a study out, oh boy, about 5 years ago now, in which the scientists took a look at the future and concluded that nothing was going to be effective without direct action because of people's lack of appreciation of the situation.
Thanks, Gary. Okay, any other perspective? Anything else we want to say on that?
We have some responses in the chat from Cindy, media attention with an exclamation point. From Dave, because that is the way to get people's attention. And because of the importance of the issue, from Charles.
Okay. So we're hearing it's not enough to not do this. We need the friction and the pressure and the media attention to push the issue because we have an emergency and we need to move our systems of power, our people in power, to do more than they are willing to do right now. So direct action is one way that we can push to make more rapid change to address an existential crisis, right? So thank you for all of those. All of those are important and part of this.
I'd like to throw out something else, and that is the urgency is felt more. Well, I can't say for sure more, but it's definitely more urgent to the generation, the newer generations than our generations.
Thanks, Doris. Okay, so now I'm going to share a little bit of research with you. So this is by a researcher named Erica Chenoweth and also Maria Stefan. And a lot of these quotes are directly from a TED Talk that was from 2006 that I'll put in the chat as well. Or Doris, if you could help with that, that would be appreciated. Thank you. So between 1900 and 2006, campaigns, and particularly this research focused on hundreds of campaigns for overthrowing authoritarian governments or land liberation movements. These campaigns, the nonviolent civil resistance campaigns, were twice as successful as the violent campaigns, twice as likely to win. And this trend has been increasing over time. Nonviolent campaigns are more successful and more common. Violent campaigns are less successful and less common. No single campaign from 1900 to 2006 during that time period failed if they had achieved the active and sustained participation of 3.5% of the population. And lots of the campaigns succeeded with fewer than that. But every single campaign that reached that threshold of 3.5% participation was a nonviolent campaign predominantly. And nonviolent campaigns are on average 4 times larger and more inclusive of women, of children, of elders, because it's easier for them to engage and be comfortable showing up. So statistically, there's value to leaning into nonviolence as part of our struggles for change and for justice. And then we also have our moral values and our faith values and reasons that we might lean into nonviolence, such as our 6th principle and our striving for world peace and justice. So some faiths include the right to self-defense, and that might include violence, but I would say most Unitarian Universalists are pretty rooted in nonviolence, both for spiritual and moral reasons, and then also here for strategic reasons. It is more effective. So Erica Chenoweth has a book that just came out last year called Civil Resistance, What You Need to Know. So that's one recommendation if you really want to dig into this research and how it applies to modern day contexts. So I want to just share nonviolent direct action is historically a very powerful tool in the toolbox for activists and change makers. It's made tremendous difference in many justice campaigns, liberation campaigns over the course of human history. So there is power, there is value in considering this as part of the toolbox. And just some few guiding things that, culture and context are always really important. They're also really important when you're considering your tactics for direct action and what nonviolence means in different cultures and different contexts, and what might get the most public support, the most engagement. So I think culture and context are always important in every single, way you could imagine, but they also really matter here when you're considering direct action. Power mapping, which means just knowing who actually has the power to do what you're calling for, and then looking at what would create friction that would push them to do the thing that you're trying to get them to do is really essential for success. And then often a direct action campaign begins with door knocking and letter writing and showing up at public meetings. And often it's most well received and effective when the people doing it can literally say, we have tried everything and nothing is working, and that is why we are here. So it's not like, you have a new issue, you immediately start with locking yourself to a door. There's a progression that often helps build the momentum, the power of community in order to be successful. And then also of note here is that 501c3 organizations, church organizations have to be mindful of legal limits around what they can do. There are gray areas and there are ways to still show up and support, as UUs have done with mobilizing to Line 3, mobilizing to Standing Rock. But that's just something for anyone who is here with, as a church leader, as a nonprofit leader, to just do that research. And so Green Faith is working with Climate Disobedience Center and the Climate Defense Project to help us understand what is that line and how can we walk up to the line without going over it. And we'd be happy to coach and support around that. Okay, so the last thing I want to share is a model by Carl Ronke, which is that everyone has a comfort zone, which is where it feels good to be, what we're used to. And then we have a stretch zone, which is where all change, growth, and transformation happens. And you might not feel totally comfortable. You're going to be learning new things. You're going to be stretching, moving a little bit out of your comfort zone. And then we all have a panic zone where we're overwhelmed, where it doesn't feel good. And often that can lead us to shrink back in, to walk away, to shut down. And so it's important to know you can grow your stretch zone with practice and intention. And as Americans, I think most of us here in the US or from the US, our system is built to give us a huge comfort zone, right? We're used to being very comfortable. I mean, it takes a lot of choice and conviction to say, I'm going to stretch and I'm going to learn and I'm going to grow because that's what is required of me in order to make the change that I need. So since the stretch zone is where change and learning really happens, my invitation is let's go into our stretch zones right now. And let's be mindful of, we're about to do an exercise together that's going to ask you to kind of put where you are on a map of your perspective of different tactics and whether you feel they are violent or non-violent, whether you would do them or you wouldn't do them. So my invitation is lean into your stretch zone. Ask yourself, why wouldn't I do this action? Why do I think it's violent? And move into those discerning questions, okay? So, oh, hey, Canadian UUs, I'm glad you're here too. I'm sure you are also very comfortable. I hope you are. Okay, so what we're about to do, these are some assumptions just so that you don't get caught in little mental rabbit holes about these things. Assume that the action we're talking about will get media attention. Assume the action we are talking about is not something you're doing alone, but that you're doing with other people as part of a concerted campaign. And assume that you will have community and legal support for the action. So those are the assumptions. We're going to present specific direct action tactics or protest tactics. And then here's a little chart that together we will you're going to pick an icon and drag it on this grid of, yes, I might do that. We're not incriminating ourselves tonight. You're not saying I'm definitely doing any of these things, but you might do this, or you definitely wouldn't do this. So pick where you are on that up to down axis. And then for that tactic, where are you on this horizontal axis? Do you think it's violent? Do you think it's nonviolent? Do you think it's somewhere in the middle? Our first tactic, I'm just going to go in this view. So public faith-based messaging out on the streets with our UU friends, with our multi-faith friends, and also even doing faith-based rituals in the public sphere. Okay, so we're out in public, we've got visual messaging, and we are also practicing our faith in public with a vigil. So imagine you're at that event, or you're being invited to that event. And I'm going to stop the screen share. And so everyone pick their icon and drag it. Would you do that? Is that nonviolent? If that's where you're at, you're in the upper right corner. So choose where that lands for you, or put it in the chat. Okay. So I'm going to ask someone who's like, yes, I would do this. Yes, this is nonviolent. Does anyone want to? I mean, this one's pretty simple. I'm assuming most of you have probably done this at least once, if not many times. But I see some, like there's some people who are a little more hesitant, maybe like the yellow heart or the red lightning bolt. Does anyone who's a little more hesitant want to share why they might not do this? Or everyone's like, I would do it. Don't be shy. It's interactive. Stretch yourself, say something.
Yeah, well, I'm elderly, I guess, and I don't know how I would rather work behind the scenes. That's going out and doing that. And I know our UU church does in groups, and my climate action team does, but I'm not comfortable doing that. I personally would, physical issues and maybe fear now of even being in a crowd. I don't know. But I work I do a lot behind the scenes. That's just where I am.
Thank you, Pat.
Allie, this is Barb. I might add that I saw each of these 4 boxes as equal boxes. I didn't realize there were gradations within the box. When I realized what you were talking about, I moved my icon to the top of the box because obviously I actually would and have done it. But within that top right-hand box, I thought they all said I might do it, and it was nonviolent. Am I wrong?
That's what I thought too.
We can roll that way. It was meant to be, if you're a little bit more hesitant, put yourself a little further down, right? But if you're like, oh yeah, I'm going to do it, then go all the way up to the top.
Well, I guess I did the right thing.
Here's a response that says crowds scare me plus the pandemic.
Yeah. And, all of that is so valid. And there's so many ways people can show up. So the intention with this exercise is really just to, understand where we are as a community, and that not everyone can do everything, and to learn and to grow together. So there is no wrong answer. I want to make sure you understand that and feel comfortable saying what you truly feel about this. Okay. Awesome. So we're going to do one more. And I'm going to share the screen. Okay, so this is a faith group with Extinction Rebellion, and they're blocking an entrance to a fossil fuel corporation. So this action would be to be more obstructing business as usual, putting yourself in the way of people going to work at that company. Or you could also imagine it's a bank that's funding fossil fuel projects that you're trying to stop. or it's a sit-in at your congressional office to demand they stop harmful legislation. But this is more along the spectrum of direct action of these groups aren't doing what we need them to do. So we're going to make them stop doing what they're doing, at least for a minute, at least for as long as I can in this moment. So this is scenario 2. So now I'll stop the share and we can go back to our grid, or you can go into the chat. Do you think that's violent, or where on the spectrum of violent to nonviolent is that for you? And then I might do that, or I wouldn't do that. Where is it on that top to down spectrum for you?
Yeah.
Cindy, do you want to maybe share your perspective on this? Also, violent to nonviolent verbally.
Yeah, when it's interfering, the first one feels like the right to free speech. The second one for me feels like it's obstructing and so it's a little touchier. No, it's like, yeah, it's impinging on other people's freedom of movement. So that's why it makes me nervous, That's all.
So Cindy, where did you put your?
I put myself at the bottom. I'm the green sun, the little ray. So that's me.
Thank you. And then Cindy, Kat, do you want to share? You don't have to, but I'm inviting you.
Well, like I said, I would do that. I would put myself out there. I don't have all of what you have because I came in late and I'm kind of lost, but that is an action I would definitely take.
And why? Do you want to share why?
Well, like you said, we have to start being more of statement makers, I believe, in order to get any real effect, because we seem to make a lot of noise, but we don't really take a lot of real forceful action. And sometimes I think we need to start being more forceful.
Thank you. And does anyone on the violent side of the line want to share their perspective on that? We have a pink heart, a blue heart, a purple sun, and a green smiley.
It's Barb. I'm the purple sun. And I didn't have to think too much about this one. I would say that I'm 80 and I've always been successful working through government to get my environmental aims done. But climate change feels different because the fossil fuel industry has just been so, I guess I'd use the word recalcitrant. And so I'm ready to do more. It felt violent to me, but I put it in the box that I might do this. And if I got braver, I might move myself closer to the top and closer to the left, but I guess I'm just not ready yet. But I'm more ready to do something than I ever would have been before.
Thanks for sharing, Barb. Appreciate it. Okay. Anyone else burning to share something on this one?
Well, I'd definitely do it, and have done it. Standing Rock, Break Free Pacific Northwest, and with the Earth Ministry here in the Seattle area. And as I kind of hesitated in my previous response about the why direct action is necessary, because the article that and the study I was referring to really had an outlandish term in its title, but it was provided by a geologist at a national convention. And basically, I'm going to give it to you this way. He was asked, after this very careful analysis of what the situation was we were in, and how bad it was, could possibly be, and what might change the situation dramatically. The title of his paper was "Is the World F*******KED?" At the end of his presentation, they asked him, and well, you know, what can we do or something? And he said the only thing that'll change the dial is direct action. The only
Thanks.
the only thing that will significantly change the direction of the decision of the policymakers is direct action, because it generates a lot of changes in people's hearts.
So thank you, Gary. Doris, can I think I can do the Shell general meeting a little.
Yeah,
as the
I think so. And a suggestion is, and never mind, go ahead.
Yeah, and then we can just do like a show of hands kind of thing.
Sounds good.
Okay, so
Do that. Can I just jump in quick and just say that I was on a Zoom call with Jane Fonda and a gal who used to be in the Obama administration. And she was talking about the Inflationary Reduction Act.
mhm.
And apparently what this is doing is giving fossil fuel industries the baby drill go ahead and go ahead with as many pipelines as you need across the United States. And there's not going to be any public comment on this. So, you know, this is an action we're going to probably have to start considering taking in order just to stop some of this stuff. We're going to have to throw our bodies out there, unfortunately, as much as I hate to say that, but I think we're getting to that point now.
Thank you, Cindy. Okay, so this is our last example, and this was one where they used singing, which is often a big part of what we love about going to church, is singing and hearing people sing together. And they use that tactic of just singing to interrupt the Shell annual meeting.
Giving yourselves that you are doing no harm. Shall must go. Giving yourselves that you are doing.
And again,
Okay.
and again.
So let's just do a show of hands. Who would join in a singing action to disrupt a shareholder meeting? A lot of folks. Okay. And is that violent or is that non-violent?
Non-violent.
Non-violent. Okay. Well, I might propose more singing actions. That had the best turnout, I think. Awesome. Okay. So now we're just going to move into a bit of discussion debrief, and Doris is going to lead that section. So we're done. You don't have to worry about PowerPoints and dragging icons anymore. We are done with that. Thank you. I want to say thank you for everyone who shared something or took a moment to really reflect. And now we'll just make space for doing that together as a full group. You're muted, Doris.
Yeah, I was there. Okay, so I was muted. This is the think, feel, and share part. So what do any of these questions kind of trigger for you? So, and I'll put these questions in the chat, but I'll just read them out. What was this exercise like for you? Did you have any moments of epiphany or self-discovery? Yes, no, how, why? Did you feel moved into stretch or panic mode at any point? And are you leaving this exercise with any big questions that maybe you'll be chewing on for the next day or two? And again, I will put these questions into the chat. Move us into gallery mode. So feel free to shout out or raise your hand. I see Nancy King Smith. Take it away, followed by Cindy Cat.
Okay, well, first, it's wonderful to see everybody, especially Allie, and thank you. And I thought this was really valuable for me, just in terms of, I always think I'm ready to stretch. And then when posed with some very specific things that I hadn't thought about doing, I realized I gotta figure out this stretching a little bit better. And so it really has given me pause. I absolutely agree that direct action and nonviolent action is of an escalating nature is what we have to do. I just haven't seen myself really doing it. And this is giving me pause to figure out how I can do that stretching. So thank you.
Thank you, Nancy. Cindy Cat next, followed by Dave Friedman.
Yeah, I like the singing idea. I may have to get our Unitarian climate group together at maybe an event or a legislative something or other in Madison and do the singing thing. That to me is something I think that I could get some people on board with.
Go ahead, Dave.
So it reminded me, I think you were there, Doris, in 2015 when we were in DC and we did the flash mob. I'm not sure you were there or not. We did 2 flash mobs when we were in DC. We sang in Union Station and we sang in the cafeteria, in the legislative cafeteria in the basement. And we had a lot of positive reactions. I'm sorry, and then COVID got in the way of anything that we were doing since then. But I thought that it was really, it had the effect, and you had legislators there, and there was a lot of people involved. I mean, we had music and singing and dancing, and it is effective for sure. We need to do more of it, and it's just fun. But you need to step out of your comfort range in order to do it. It's scary. Some of it is scary.
Go
I
ahead,
guess I've got-
Marty. And then there is a question in the chat, Allie, that you might want to take. And I will say that this is being recorded and will be posted. Take it away, Marty.
So thank you for this event this evening. I think it's very helpful. I'm part of the Green Faith Circle of Southern New Jersey. And last year, prior to the election, we organized constituent meetings with the key people who were up for election that year in the 3 different counties that we represent for our different faith communities. And it was a little challenging because I hadn't done much of that kind of advocacy work before, but I love the idea of moving into the stretch zone, but at the same time not getting into the panic zone. So thank you for this program tonight.
Allie, would you like to take the question followed by Robert?
Let's move to Robert. I haven't processed it yet.
Okay, yeah, I just, my thought is, yes, it is absolutely worth doing whatever works, and wherever it is on that spectrum, because the situation is so desperate. Actually, our congregation recently had a book study on a book titled "Think Again" by Adam Grant, which talks about changing our own minds and opening our own minds to change, but more about how to more skillfully influence other people. And and actually there was another book that I liked even better than that, and called "The Secret Art of Not Giving a Flying F." Yeah, but it's a great book in terms of it helped me to see ways to open my own thinking more, which is part of what has to happen. But it also gave more also ways to help change other people's thinking. You know, in the beginning, you were saying that what was effective was when 3.5% of the people got on board with a nonviolent. And again, whatever works, I think, is what we have to do. But to me, reaching the sense, when you first started out, you talked about reaching out, partnering with elected officials, welcoming people, whether it's at a protest or wherever, and to whatever extent we can be in that vein, we have a better chance of bringing people in, changing people's minds, or getting more people actively involved by being that welcoming person. And anyway, you know, some of it goes a lot too to very deeply listening to the other person. These books go into a lot of depth in terms of how to do that.
Okay, well, I
Thanks,
would like
Barbara.
to just in these last few minutes, we will let Allie take that last question. Nancy, let us know if your hand is raised for a second time or if it's just still up accidentally. We'll, after Allie takes the last question, we'll move into our closing, and is our normal way here during our slick national collaboration calls, we go into overtime and nobody has any obligation to stay. But I will say this was a fun, interesting, stimulating exercise, and we only showed 3 of the types of actions out of about 9 that we had prepared. So we can go into overtime and keep talking about actions as anyone who cares to stay wishes. Take it away, Allie.
Sure. So the question from Linda, how do I bring this to my climate action team? Is my congregation ready? You know, one thing I want to share is not everyone has to do the physically challenging, more risky thing. You know, it really takes a whole network of support in order to do that. And it's really important to know, you know, just do that inner discernment work of what are my strengths? What are my, you know, growing edges? What are my weaknesses where I'm just never going to be good at talking to the cops and someone else should do that, you know? So it's really important to, you know, not try to hit like a round peg into a square hole, but to really honor yourself and those growing edges. Try to stretch and try to encourage others, but, you know, don't try to move someone who isn't ready or who isn't physically able to do something into doing something that they're not, you know. So I think it comes with, like Robert was saying, like we need deep intention of listening to each other and to ourselves, and also to our people we're trying to shift and move. So, you know, I think that's one of the biggest skills of organizing, and is how do we do that listening and have one-on-one conversations with your minister, with your climate team members, and then figure out the culture and the context of what's going to be the best way to move folks just into their stretch zone and not into their panic zone, right? And so it seemed like singing resonated really well with a lot of folks here, and that might be a good way to start. I did put a link into the chat from UU Ministry for Earth. One of our friends, Dana in San Antonio, made a song. She made Hallelujah by Leonard Cohen into like a climate anthem, and the lyrics are there, and you can print them out and share the lyrics. And they sang this song to push for passing a climate plan in San Antonio in 2019. And then she also wrote a song for our Earth Day worship service, and the lyrics for that one are available. It's called All of Us, also about climate change and how it will take all of us. And, you know, there's all kinds of songbooks. Sunrise Movement has a songbook. And so that's one way that it seems like there's enough resonance, there's enough comfort or willingness to stretch that UUs might take on more singing at public actions as a way to be involved. And there's another tool called the movement ecosystem that helps you kind of think, okay, I'm the person who should show up with the cookies and the coffee, or, you know, I'm the person who's ready to sit in front of that door and keep them from being able to get in. So yeah, just, you know, be gentle and do that work of discerning and being in relationship and, being awake to the crisis that we're in and always questioning what's it going to take and what can we accomplish together and what's the best tactic for this exact context and culture at this exact moment, right? And just always be willing to grow and to shift and be aware of when things are shifting around us, So that's my last word of wisdom on that. Doris, back over to you.
Thank you. All right. So we did our think, feel, and share. And actually, we kind of neglected to do our opening chalice lighting. I thought we might have time to do an opening and closing here at the end, but we're kind of out of time. So I think when I see direct action that makes me uncomfortable, I think about how I would feel and what I would be doing if I were 40 years younger. And so I'd like to introduce you here to Bradley, who I met at Faiths for Fossil Faith. All right. Anyway, the protest a year ago. And Bradley's mother said to me that she asked Bradley if he wanted to come to the events at the White House. He said, yes, but Mom, I shouldn't have to do this. The earth should just be clean for me. And so I always have loved, we don't inherit the earth, we borrow it from our children. So with that in mind, I'd just like to thank everyone.
One has definitely been worth the time and effort to come.
Okay, let's hear more about that in overtime. Much gratitude to Allie. Thank you, everyone. And if you want to hang in there, please feel free to do so. You are free to go unless you want to do overtime. So moving over to Marty, tell us about your event and I'll queue up some more of those actions that we can take a look at and see how everybody thinks and feels, and if they feel it's violent or not. Go ahead, Marty. Tell us more about
the
event.
This event is called Up to Us 2022. And the auditorium that it's going to be held in holds about 700 people. They're going to have, I don't know how many of you are familiar with Project Drawdown, but that's an organization that was started by Paul Hawken about 8 years ago. And they came out with a book and then a follow-up to the book, identifying all of the key solutions that can be implemented that can help us deal with climate change. There's another woman who's going to be there, Janine Benyus, who's the co-founder of something called the Biomimicry Institute, where we can learn about how animals have solved different problems, and we can hopefully benefit from their creativity. There are two will this also be
live streamed?
It will be live streamed. Yes.
Great,
if you register through the link that I put in the chat, you can have a choice of either registering to be there in person or to participate in the live stream. Bill McKibben, I believe, I'm not sure if he's going to be there in person, but you're probably familiar with him through 350.org or more recently through his organization Third Act. Where they're encouraging people to do this nonviolent action to encourage all the large banks and investment firms to divest from fossil fuel investments, to stop supporting carbon investment projects. Alexandria Villasenor is basically our American version of Greta Thunberg, who's been sitting in front of the United Nations every Friday for almost all of the last 2 years. I don't know all of the other people personally, but I've met these people and they are extraordinary. And,
sounds like a phenomenal event.
Yeah.
All right. So here's a couple other actions. And we didn't, okay, so am I sharing my screen? Do we all see Cindy Davidson and a few other UUs that we might recognize on the screen?
Yep.
We do, okay. So we did talk about this action already. And this one, more UUs at the end of the line there. Going to public meetings, participating in public meetings. So, so a theatrical event. So I'll just give you a chance to take a look. It looks like this one's also in London, and essentially a group that is highly visible, highly noticeable, very emotionally dressed and expressive. And they are, you know, clearly trying to convey something, although this particular slide doesn't show exactly what that is. So I'm going to stop share now and just get, we'll just take a show of hands for, would you do this? And I'm going to go with yes, for I would do that. How about others?
Some of us like dressing up.
You always like dressing up. Good job. All right. Okay. So what about, well, we can just, you know, shout it out. Do you feel like there was a level of violence? What was it violent? There, I saw no evidence it was violent. Anybody feel it was violent?
Well, there's different kinds of violence, right? There's physical, there's emotional, and there's psychological.
Mm-hmm.
That's a little bit of a struggle I have with. Certainly it's psychologically violent, you know, compared to what on the scale, right? It's not physically violent at all. It might be emotionally violent and trigger reactions, strong reactions in some susceptible people.
Well, okay, let me try something else. Does it look like it would be effective? Did that action look effective?
Are you talking
And
all
effective?
The ladies dressed in red? I thought
Yes.
that was pretty effective, yeah. And
Yeah.
and I don't believe the police in London carry guns either, so that to me would be a much better option, because around here, you know, all of our police are weaponized and they don't have any issues using them, actually.
Yeah.
Maybe
All
in
right.
the future.
All right. Well, okay. Let me try another one. And this one, I would love to hear Dave Friedman's thoughts, because he will know why when he sees this slide. Here, let's share.
You know, the last slide, if you didn't know what the issue was, you were not educated by it.
Yeah,
So
I mean,
that's missing there is some,
you
know, identification of the issue.
You're absolutely right. And I did forget to include that. Oops, let's go back up. Okay, so Dave, how about a little bit of context of why this is important to you?
Okay, so this one was important to me because I guess.
Okay, and can you adjust your sound, please?
Okay, I can get closer. How's that?
Better.
Okay. If I'm not, well, partially because I lead a group that declares climate emergencies across the country, and have been doing it for several years. So, and I would say that that's direct action for sure. Several of them have been, you know, approved and moved forward into climate action plans. One in particular has not. And he's got the stick-to-itiveness of, I think he's up to 150 now, or 200, I don't know. He just crossed 150 in Oregon, where he does a climate strike every Friday, and he's been doing it for forever. He's got almost 1,000 people on his mailing list now, and he keeps doing it. So I think that that's why climate emergency is important, because change comes at the local level. No matter what happens, at the end of the day, it's the local municipalities and the people on the front line that have to deal with it. You know, having been an emergency manager in residential facilities and homeless facilities and hurricanes in Florida, you're on your own, and you need to be prepared. And so it's up to the local folks to do it.
Yeah. All right. So any comments on, we'll take one or two comments on declaring climate emergencies in your location. And then I have the next one is, well, it's a lot more of a challenging event. And Allie, if you have one that you want to make sure we take time to discuss, let me know. So comments on the climate emergency.
Funny you should ask, because just yesterday, the United Student Leaders of Whidbey and their supporters confronted the Island County Commissioners on their hesitancy to declare a climate emergency and establish goals and set timelines for achieving them in response to the climate emergency.
Yeah, and you know, I guess this is a consideration for context and culture, or at least this is my reaction. And that is, you know what, there's a lot of cities that haven't declared a climate emergency that are actually working behind the scenes quietly, not using the word climate to get things done. And so I guess if by some stretch, Whidbey Island is actually moving in the right direction, although not declaring a climate emergency, that might be okay. But again, okay, so Gary was at
actually,
but I don't know.
Actually, they're not, and you can't solve a problem you haven't identified and analyzed, and you can't address it properly without giving it a name that describes it. And as you all know, we are among a very few who are alarmed enough to be talking about this right now. Most of our peers do not. And if you examine, criteria or priorities that like voters have, this one's not near the top.
Yeah, I'll agree with that, Gary, but I do know that statistically, the numbers of people that are actually alarmed about the climate right now are actually greatly growing. And I think yesterday, somewhere in California had the hottest day on record in history. So, it's just something people are starting to realize. I think a lot of what happens right now is the fact that it's sort of a fear factor. People are just kind of terrified, don't really know what to do. And so groups like us, I guess, have to be the ones to kind of lead these people into the movements to join us.
You still need to have the proper terminology.
Oh, absolutely. And I don't agree with
the doctor comes in.
Yep.
I'm a medical person and we evaluate situations and triage them. And if somebody is having, flatlining, we don't hesitate to call an emergency.
So Gary, you have given me a perfect segue into calling out one of the resources I put into my last email, and that was the CDP-ICLEI event that's tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. Now, what that does, what essentially they're calling out is that is a protocol for measuring your community's emissions, and it's standardized globally. And so some people use the phrase, you you can't fix what you don't measure. And so you've sort of named it in what you've said earlier, Gary. And so anyway, that is a hugely important effort to get a baseline for your community and then consistently measure your progress over time. And so that's one of the reasons that that program was included in my email message to everybody, and hopefully some people will join it. And I also use that to call attention to, I believe it was Kansas City, that has not declared a climate emergency. However, they were one of the early adapting cities to include the ICLEI CDP protocol in their, what they don't call a climate action plan. But it's an indicator that they've actually got their stuff together as they deal with energy, climate issues, etc. Even though they're not in a location that's gonna broadcast, hey, we're doing a climate action plan. People, aren't you glad you're paying your taxes to do something that's fake news? Okay. So moving on.
Doris, just a second. I'd like
Yes.
to just piggyback on that just for a second. You know, that I think that concept is really, really important. Oh man, and I've just lost it. Never mind, we'll have to come back to it. I'm sorry.
Okay, well, while I'm putting up the last slide, I hopefully you'll remember that. Okay, so this one.
Oh, okay, I remember.
Okay,
it's
go
what you were
ahead, and
saying.
you can go ahead and say it while we're all looking.
There is such hostility among so many people with the word climate change, so that in any instance where the same goal is accomplished, but not having that inflammatory language can be hugely beneficial in moving people in a positive direction.
Thank you. Okay, so the slide you're looking at was taken, this image was taken 4th of July, less than 2 miles from where I live. I live very close to the Washington, D.C. Beltway. And yeah, when I see this, my reaction is, oh my God, that's just way too much. But I don't know how I would feel, like I said earlier, if I were 40 years younger, staring in the face at the way climate is unfolding. So what you have here are about 9-10 people, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, yeah, about 10 people who did a sit-in across the Beltway and blocked traffic, I don't know, an hour or two or something like that. So violent, not exactly disruptive, extremely attention getting. Well, I sure knew about it because I live there. How about the rest of you? Did you hear about the Beltway being stopped? We sure heard about it with the caravans, caravans for Trump, whatever that was about. But I don't know who heard about that when it happened in DC, the climate activists. Okay, Allie did. Anyone else? Yeah.
I'll tell you what, if I were in one of those cars and waiting in that line, my reaction to that would be, if I were on the fence with regard to climate, I would be going just the opposite of whatever was trying to be accomplished there. So I think you have to be really careful in terms of how you do that. I'm not sure. My sense is that can draw a lot of attention to something, and I don't think that you're going to get to the 3.5% of people responding positively to it, though.
Allie's got her hand up.
Yeah. So one of the Green Faith local leaders in Charlotte was actually participating in that action, was one of the people sitting in the roads. Her name's Holly. And there was also a woman who was pregnant, who was there, quite pregnant, who was sitting on the road and taking that risk. And so I heard from Holly about what that action was like, and they did. I can't remember if it was this one or another one, but they'd like go around with offer donuts to the people who were waiting, be like, yeah, we know this is so frustrating. Here's some more information. We commiserate. Here's why we're doing it. And like engaging with them, right? Not simply just being like, sorry, but actually trying to engage with them positively. And I'm sure some people were still angry. She told me there was one guy in particular, and they had to de-escalate it, but that group, I'm forgetting the name of this group that's using road blockades right now as a tactic, and it kind of comes over from the UK. They
Extinction Rebellion, I believe, is the group.
Well, there's a like an offshoot.
Okay.
Is it shut down DC?
No. But they're like just focused on road blockades, because in the UK, they got their city to like switch tunes and do what they needed them to do really quickly from shutting down the roads like multiple days in a row. And that's in that context, in the UK context, multiple days of disruptive actions in quick succession is proving to be very effective. And you don't need 3.5% of the population to do it. They're doing it with a very small amount of people. But then it's just like, we can't assume that what works here is going to work in the UK, or what works there is going to work here, but people are trying it out, right? And seeing what happens in our context. So that's what I know about that.
Well, and I have to applaud anyone that is willing to move in that direction. In again, anything that works, and if that overall has a positive effect, even a little bit, it's definitely worth doing it.
There's a famous picture of a young man I believe it was in Tiananmen Square in China, who stood in front of the tanks and of course, unfortunately, it didn't end up, with the kind of freedoms that we were hoping for. But one young man was able to stop a whole line of tanks for some period of time at that point in time, with great courage on his part.
So I'm going to close the discussion with this last slide. It's particularly meaningful to me, not this picture exactly, but a silent climate vigil. I was, what was it? It was 2002, 2003. The second Iraq war was inevitable. My son was 16. We had great activists at my church in UU Church in Jacksonville, Florida. They were holding a silent vigil, a multi-faith silent vigil, and they were doing it every weekend preceding the inevitable Iraq war. And I had never done a single thing in my life as far as activism. And I said, I can do that. I can stand there with the group silently and be visible. And so that was my on-ramp. So this is my plug for people need on-ramps to become engaged. That was mine. And the rest is history, and it continues to unfold.
Now, can you put that slide back up, Doris?
Sure.
Yeah,
it's out of, I think it was Louisville, Kentucky. I think it was.
Well, I'm just having a little problem here. Can you put it back up?
Yeah.
Because I think it says climate vigil, and you said it was a silent vigil.
Well, the one that I joined 20 years ago was a silent vigil.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, it looks like they're
with song sheets, Doris.
Yeah, I know.
This lady has a songbook.
Yeah. Well, and my mother actually, my very Catholic mother actually came to one of our silent vigils when she came to visit me in Florida. And she said, yeah, I want to go to that. I want to go pray the rosary while I sit with everyone else in silence, trying to not let this inevitable second Iraq war happen. All right. Well, much love, much gratitude to everyone. In the coming months, we will no doubt have some focus on COP27 and quite a bit else. And Ailey, well, all right, Ailey, I'm not going to make you turn your camera back on, but
Come on.
I know that that everybody is, well, I can't speak for everybody, but I'm pretty sure. Well, there we go. Gary's whining.
Nice
Oh,
job.
Ellie's cooking. Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us. And we know you're not going to be a stranger.
Oh yeah, still here. Love y'all. Thank you.
Good night, all.
All right.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you, everyone.
for
Good
that.
night.
Thank you
And
for
Marty,
that.
thanks again for that information.
Yeah, I hope some of you will be able to join us. It's really worth it. Thank you again.
I know.
Yeah,
Hi,
I tried to
Cindy.
sign up for that,
So
Marty.
Cindy,
Hopefully
you're in
I
Madison?
did.
Cindy, are you in
Close enough.
Madison?
Close
What?
enough. Close enough.
Close enough. Yeah. I'm a Badger. All right. All right. Well, take care.
All right, take care. And I'm going to ask you to send me a recording because I'm going to hope that my climate group for the Unitarian Church will take the time to watch this, because I think there were some really good ideas in there for us. We're always looking for things to do, and a lot of this is something I think we could do. So
Great.
yeah,
Great.
appreciate it. Thank you. Take care,
Thank you.
Doris.
Night.